I am Will I Am, and I make time to read the Wall Street Journal.
Transformation itself requires a very important skill, and that is the skill of leadership. And to talk to us about leadership and how important also understanding cultural change is, it's my pleasure to introduce you to Lindsey Pattison. Lindsey is CEO worldwide of Maxus, and certainly please join me in welcoming her on stage to talk about leadership, culture, and change. Lindsey.
Soundtrack. I think I might have Rocky playing every time I come up on stage. So thank you very much, Marcel. I'm Lindsey Pattison. I've got the honour of being the worldwide CEO for Maxus, which is part of Group M and in turn WPP. So we are now in the fourth industrial revolution, and that's a technological revolution, one that will transform the way we work, the way we live, and the way that we relate to one another. And that was the key takeout from the World Economic Forum in Davos just last month. It's a revolution that's tangibly affecting almost every organization and every individual person that has money to spend on goods and services. Very recent advances in genetics will make future generations healthier and potentially smarter. Last month at CES, we saw tons of artificial intelligence innovations that were market-ready. Driverless cars, or driverless Ubers, will make the basic applications of the tech augment every aspect of our daily lives, reducing time spent on mundane tasks or waiting for taxis. And everything but everything will be increasingly connected as the Internet of Things joins up manufacturing, supply chain, marketing, sales, and consumption. And we think we're working really quickly now, but I think our current speed of operation will look like slow motion in comparison. And this change is being driven by all of us. We've got an insatiable appetite for technology as consumers. We're locked into an ongoing love affair with our smartphones as they help us work, bank, shop, and share, through to aiding our fitness management and our diet. So we're in the fourth industrial revolution, a technological revolution, and a time of profound and seismic change. And this revolution has created a crisis. One of the top 5 issues, again identified by the World Economic Forum, is a crisis of leadership. 86% of those surveyed by the World Economic Forum said they had no faith in leadership, although interestingly, this was marginally better in Asia at only 73%. And thankfully, business leaders were perceived better than governments or religious leaders. I'm not sure we should take that as a compliment. It seems a fairly low bar. But the question then asked by the World Economic Forum is, what skills do leaders need to win back the confidence of their constituents? Several virtues were identified: having a global and interdisciplinary perspective, a long-term empirical planning, strong communication skills, a prioritization of social justice and well-being over financial growth, empathy, courage, morality, and a collaborative nature. So just a bit for us all to work on. And in our own marketing world, we're feeling the impact of change more than ever. At the end of last year, Maxus, in partnership with the Financial Times, undertook a change survey amongst 180 C-suite leaders around the world, and it drew very similar conclusions. 91% of senior leaders feel that technology is the single most significant change affecting their industry, but only 25% feel ready for it. Technology effectiveness and data, so our version of TED, is dominating all that we do. It's dominating the agenda today, and I'm sure it dominates your internal discussions. But having access to the very best technology and data and inventory is pointless unless we have the very best people. And those are people that need to be led by us. And the characteristics of our workforce, those we seek to lead, are also changing. And again, that change is profound. Most leaders are baby boomers. Those are people born between 1946 and 1964. Some, like me, are Gen Xers, born between 1965 and 1980. But our workforce today are largely Gen Y, also known as the Net generation, and they're born between 1980 and 1994. And note, this is a more contained group than millennials, which stretches on for another 10 years, and it's a phrase I hate because I think it's far too big a group. But they are very different to other generations in terms of work-related values and attitudes. They are obviously the most technologically savvy and educated generation to enter the workforce. They like to think in the short term. They expect immediate feedback and reward for their efforts. But on the flip side, they welcome responsibility, and they see it as a chance to prove their skills and show their worth within the organization. And the generation has grown up in a rapidly changing environment. They not only expect change, but they actively seek it out. And if their needs are not met, as we all know, they will not hesitate to find somewhere else that will accommodate them. So we're required to inspire this new generation of people who are motivated differently, and people who have the widest range of employment and entrepreneurial opportunities at their fingertips. Telling people to jump and hoping they ask how high simply doesn't work. We all work longer hours than ever before. The same technology that is our friend is also our foe, keeping us always in contact. And this can be overwhelming and exhausting. So very human skills in leadership, I think, become ever more vital. Great business results are impossible without leaders who excel at inspiring people and in capturing hearts and minds. So back to that fourth industrial revolution, convergent technologies will make many aspects of our lives easier and better. But can they help us lead people? Robots, artificial intelligence, and machine learning will undoubtedly get smarter than our human brains. But they can never replace our hearts, our souls, empathy, and intuition. So I'd argue effective leadership in this new and very different world is more important than ever. So that's the context. What should we do? How should we now lead to the increasingly complex, ambiguous, and fast-moving times we find ourselves in? Well, we know the only way to grow is to innovate. It's not possible to grow by repeating previous strategies and behaviors. And at Maxus, we're in the business of change. As one of the fastest-growing media agency networks, we have to reinvent our proposition and our services every 18 months. So I'll give some perspective on being Maxus's global leader and how innovation, culture, and change has shaped our business. So let's rewind 18 months when I took over running Maxus, and we were in very good shape as a business. We operated across 55 markets with billings of around $10 billion US. It had been a really fast journey. Only 5 years earlier, there'd been around 800 of us, compared with the 2,500 as I became CEO. So such massive growth comes with inevitable growing pains, some of which were in urgent need of attention. Internal communications, one of the most important elements, I think, for a leader to get right, were limited and ambiguous. And whilst the company was loved by many existing staff and clients, our proposition and direction were not at all clear. And we could all see the dangers that after 5 years of exponential growth, there was a danger of that slowing, especially here in APAC. And for me, leadership internally is as vital as success externally, and of course the two are intrinsically linked. As a service business, our main asset are our people, so understanding how to influence, inspire, and galvanize them is critical. And as we all know, in marketing, really knowing your audience is vital. So turning the lens internally, the average age of a Maxus employee, and I'm sure it's the same for many of you in this room, is just 27. We have more women than men. We are more diverse in our backgrounds in areas like ethnicity, education levels, and wealth. So Gen Y, aka my Maxus colleagues all over the world, have high and different expectations of leaders. Just having the title of CEO is not enough. There are 3 things that Gen Ys expect their leaders to be. The first is a collaborative decision maker, so incorporating multiple views, showing they're able to get along with others, and expressing views in a way that's really easy to understand. Secondly, leaders should be flexible and able to connect on a personal level, and Gen Y naturally assume that they can cut through and interact across layers at a much more personal level than previous generations. So open door policies and open plan office space can physically demonstrate and encourage that openness. And this is a shot from our 3-month-old London office, which is designed in exactly that way. And the energy levels and the happiness levels are just incredible. And as many of us will know, Gen Y expect leaders to challenge the status quo. My colleagues want to see fast progress, innovation, and entrepreneurship. We have a mantra, which is literally written on the wall, which says, never stand still. If you stand still, you get lost because someone else is always moving. And it's a really competitive world, media and marketing. Not only agency versus agency, but our competitor base has widened to include media vendors, tech companies, data companies, and consultants. And we all want the very best talent to follow us. So as a relatively new and young global CEO, I watched how others did things. I didn't always like what I saw. I didn't agree with how things ran. Old systems, and dare I say it, and I will come back to this, somewhat of an old boys' club, a game in which one is encouraged to play inevitably in the interests of the system. On the left, you'll see the older characteristics of leadership, very successful ones, I might add, for many in the past. And on the right, you'll see the style that I think works better for me and for those I seek to lead. Without doubt, a common factor across the two is that charisma remains a quality that's always been needed and always will. But it's not enough. The best leaders know they must be open, mediate, listen, include the opinions of others before making a decision, network, and balance the IQ needed to run the business with the EQ needed to manage the talent. There's a 10-year-old study by the Harvard Business Review that asks executives a really simple and I think a really difficult question. Why would anyone be led by you? Most people hated it, and most people couldn't answer. And it's a great question. And I think leaders have good reason to be scared because you can't do anything in business without followers. And followers in these empowered times can be hard to find. So leaders have to find ways to engage with people and rouse their commitment to company goals. The strategy concluded that as hygiene, you must have vision, energy, authority, and strategic direction. Those are givens. But take a look and see how comfortable you are with these 4 very human qualities, which they concluded make the most successful leaders. They selectively show their weakness. By exposing some vulnerability, they reveal their approachability and humanity. They rely heavily on intuition to gauge the appropriate timing and course of action, the ability to collect and interpret soft data that helps them know just when and how to act. They manage employees with tough empathy. Inspirational leaders empathize passionately and realistically with people, and they care intensely about the work employees do. And they reveal their differences. They capitalize on what's unique about themselves. Now, you may find yourself in a top position without any of those qualities, but few people will want to be led by you. And it's really hard to describe yourself, especially here on a big stage. So I asked other people how they would help me answer that tricky question of why anyone would be led by me. And here's the ones that I agree with, or the ones that I'm happy to share on a big stage. So I'm often described as a positive force of nature, someone who is optimistic and empathetic, open, non-hierarchical, challenging, and collaborative, but essentially leading to me is trying to inspire others to succeed, so a model of empowering people around me. And you'll make up your own mind from seeing me today and meeting me later, but I'm clear on what qualities I have and what else I need to work on to succeed in today's ultra-fast, ultra-competitive, and continually changing world. Any one person won't succeed by being brilliant by themselves, only by influencing others and creating the conditions for success. So how does this ripple across the Maxus culture? Well, Jack Welch and Peter Drucker have both been credited by saying that culture eats strategy for breakfast. Our culture is super defined at Maxus and really well understood globally as PACE, which stands for people who are passionate, agile, collaborative, and entrepreneurial. It's helpful. It can be shortened to pace because, of course, we'll all have to work very quickly. But crucially, it's used. It's how we evaluate whether someone is great or a poor fit for our business. And it's an important part of how everyone is appraised and subsequently rewarded. Globally, as I said earlier, when we think about Gen Y, we have to involve them meaningfully and equip them in the best possible way for our complex business. So we've got several global programs that develop our people and keep them. I won't talk about them all, but collectively they're designed to empower our people to practice the skills needed in today's world. So Lead into Change helps our client-facing senior staff with interpersonal skills needed to build stronger client relationships. And in a prevailing tech and data-driven world, I think it's really important to still be human. We're still a people business, so the program looks at ways to create space to reflect on and interpret possibilities, getting to the heart of a challenge, and looking at how to address it with a client and with confidence. The picture behind me says a lot about Maxus. We don't have global board meetings at Cannes. We send some of our Gen Y talent from all over our network to speak on panels and provide a young gun's view on the world. In the months before they go to Cannes, they get a crash course from our global head of planning and creativity and coaching to help build their confidence. And our senior leaders take great pride in mentoring with a Rising Star program called Endeavour, which gives tomorrow's leaders a chance to work with members of the Global Exco to deliver a game-changing initiative back to the business. The groups work across cultures to give them a greater appreciation of diversity and to hardwire our sense of collaboration in our network. And we think it's absolutely vital that our leaders of the future understand that big picture really early on. So this year we're giving around 100 of the people across Maxus the opportunity to experience what it's like to live and work in a different Maxus office worldwide in a global exchange program. So back just for a moment on the business side, I think reinterpreting leadership also requires you to reinterpret growth. We all know that media billings are becoming a less relevant means of measuring that growth, given a range of non-paid-for media services we all now offer. And we heard earlier with Michael in his panel about the media palooza and the chaos and the crazy levels of pitching last year. But as I reflect back on 6th year of stellar Maxus growth, I have a different set of priorities that start in this order. How about we begin with delighting our current clients and subsequently retaining them? How about we create organic growth with new services to better serve our clients' expanded needs? How can we help our Asia clients move east out? And how do we help our Western clients move in? How do we make the most of being part of WPP, working across the world's largest marketing services group, collaborating on shared clients, joining the dots, and creating smarter, integrated solutions? And then, and I think only then, new business is really important, but it's not the only means to the end. It is, however, the way that industry continues to measure success, which in my view is totally flawed. So new ways of working, a greater emphasis on culture, an empowerment model for Gen Y, a balance of EQ and IQ, a relook at category norms around growth too. But let's take a pause. Is there an elephant in the room? And I saw some tweets about this earlier on. So yes, you may have noticed that I'm a woman. It is an indisputable fact, although I had some feedback recently that I am 60% Lindsey, 20% male, and 20% female. I don't really know what to make of that feedback. I think it was a compliment because it was said by a man, but maybe I'm kidding myself. But I do get asked almost all the time if being a woman matters in the way that I lead, and if it really matters at all. So is it relevant? Well, it may sound like a really small thing, but there are questions I always get asked that men just wouldn't. And if you've got some time, take a look at #questions4men. So questions and assumptions that are frankly just irritating. Changing your name when married, being called bossy rather than the boss, and always being asked about juggling work and family life. Are these asked of male leaders on a daily basis? I just don't see that they are. How does your husband cope when you're away so much? I get asked every time I travel. As well as your wife is my normal reply. I still think there's a tightrope that women have to walk, or double standards around ambition. And to be a leader, I think you need to have ambition. Women like me can be labeled bossy or aggressive, and ambition is somehow a negative, which in my view is not equally applied to men, and I think ambition is really good. I just think it should be a gender-neutral term. There's a really famous Harvard Business School study called Heidi and Howard, which looks at gender congruity, and it notes that women walk a tightrope between being liked and competent. If a woman is liked, she's not seen as competent, and if she's competent, then often she's not liked. Now, to me, and I'm sure all the other women in the room, I think that's a pretty depressing and a low bar. I'd rather be loved and brilliant, not liked or competent. But according to research in social psychology, if a group's representation falls below 20% in a given society, then it's going to be subjected to stereotyping, whether it likes it or not. So whilst things are improving and changing for the better, and there are tons of initiatives to help make it more equal, it is still a relevant issue if we look at the stats. We just don't have enough senior women in enough senior positions in almost every industry and in almost every market. It's similar worldwide, but in the US, 5% of the top 100 companies are run by women. If we look at the UK, seven of the top 100 companies have either a female CEO or a female chairman. It's 5 CEOs and 2 chairmen, and that's a record high. Yet 14 men called David and 17 men called John equal those 7 women across those companies. I kid you not. Advertising is not that bad. 25% of our senior leaders in my home market in the UK are female, so it's okay. It's not equal. If we look at the creative industry, it used to be particularly bad with 3% of executive creative directors being female. It's now better at 11% in some of the mature markets. But given that women control 2/3 of the spending power, which is $20 trillion US, you'd think people making the ads could empathize better with those largely buying the product. And if you move on to global positions, it's not great at all. Now Laura Desmond has changed her role. I'm the only female global leader in a media business, and the only other female global leader I know at an agency level is Jean Lin at Isobar, who is a fabulous leader based here in Asia. And this would appear to be reflected in the ongoing gender gap. Now, there are varying sources and varying stats, but the global average is that women are paid 79 cents to every male dollar. And I couldn't see the stats for Hong Kong specifically, but here in Asia, it's broadly worst, with China ranked 91st and India ranked 107th. I think they were both 32% off and 34% better off, respectively. And I think the situation has to improve because I think Gen Y simply won't accept the status, and because it makes a difference to the hard business metrics that we all in this room are measured by. So lots of studies show that diversity drives better business results. Often cited research by Catalyst demonstrates that companies with a higher female representation in top management outperform those that don't by delivering a 34% greater return to shareholders. But there have been some positives too, with more female non-exec directors and more female local leaders, again, especially here in Asia, setting great examples to follow. And I believe it's a generational issue which will improve. And just to clarify the situation as it stands at Maxus, we have a good number of senior women in senior roles in our network at about 40%. But when it comes to pushing them up to board level, it's not as good, only 24%. Here in Asia, we have some fabulous female leaders. So Annie, our president in China, Didi, who runs Thailand, Rose, who used to run Vietnam super successfully, now runs our client business here in Asia, Priti, our CSO in India, Eileen in Malaysia, 2 female MDs in Australia, Melanie Lowe here runs Group M in Hong Kong, and Kyoko at our sister agency is a female Asia-Pacific CEO here. So some great talent around the group. And something I'm really sure about is that none of the women at Maxus or at Group M or any other company want to be promoted just because of their biology. So I think it's time for us to look at the barriers that exist for our female talent in the industry, the ones that we create by not challenging out-of-date policy, the ones we create for ourselves as women, as well as the unconscious bias that exists within most organizations. And lots of people are talking a really good game about women and diversity. It seems to be a very hot topic at the moment, but few people, I think, are actually putting it into practice. And I think it's my duty as a female global leader to try and start doing more, at least starting with the company that I run, so Maxus. So 2 projects that are launching this year. The first is called Mind the Gap, which is about getting to grips with data and making a commitment to the basic changes in policy we need to make equality viable on a practical level. So we've looked at the subject of gender gap. Across our top 12 markets, I'm really delighted that it's only 4% in favour of men, but it is variable by market and variable by level, so we do have more work to do. We also want to look at maternity and paternity benefits and our flexible working. 65% of our markets offer enhanced maternity benefits, 88% of our markets offer paternity leave, but we need to make that consistently great. 60% of our markets offer flexible working, and we've seen an amazing response to an agile working approach in the UK, which I hope to replicate across our network wherever possible. And I'm really excited about the launch of my Walk the Talk program for women at Maxus in April. We're running 3 events, 1 in New York for the Americas, 1 in London for Europe, and 1 in Thailand here for Asia Pacific, for every senior female leader and the next generation of standout talent to empower and inspire women to reach their potential. So it's not a training program. I have spoken with my very male global CFO and warned him there may be yoga involved first thing in the morning, which I think is fine. But the event is a journey of discovery into what empowers us and what holds us back as women in this industry. And we're creating space for our female leaders to look at their own personal journeys, consider their bigger game, and help them develop the tools and the techniques to get there. And neither project is about creating an undue advantage for women at Maxus, nor is it designed to be at the expense of men. It's about creating a level playing field, and the stats show we're just not there yet. And the reason I'm passionate about it is that we simply need the very best people in our business, so we need to be gender blind. And in fact, the latest thinking from the American Business School, Wharton, shows that less gender-specific terms are now being applied to both male and female leaders. So if that means I'm seeing as having the traditional male virtues of being strong, intelligent, and competitive, then I'll take them, and thanks very much. And also, of course, I'll continue to use the traditionally female virtues of being collaborative, empathetic, and great at multitasking too. So today's leadership goes way beyond gender. It's generational. Today's workforce won't accept the past norms, whether they be gender or any other kind of bias. And I know we've got a broader session on diversity with Katie Vanek-Smith later this afternoon, which I'm looking forward to. So let me leave you with 3 questions as you think about leadership, culture, and change. That tricky question. Why should anyone be led by you? What are you doing to encourage a level playing field? And the answers to 1 or 2 should help you with 3. What are you doing to lead your organization effectively in these times of extreme change or the 4th industrial revolution? Thank you very much.
I'm Carly Kloss, and I make time to read the Wall Street Journal.